assessment of the significance of this deal?
Well, we don't know the contours of the deal. What it appears that it will be is kind of a more sector-specific deal rather than a trade deal in the truest sense of the word. But from the Trump administration's view, this is very much a victory. They've been looking for kind of a win in terms of their tariffs. They've repeatedly pointed to the more than 80 countries that they say are willing to negotiate deals as a sign that this campaign is working, and there's been a lot of speculation in recent days and weeks about who that might be, and the UK got there first. So very much the Trump administration will be celebrating this as what they hope to be the first of many.
Just in terms of the UK and the US, where is the UK when it comes to being a trading partner in terms of the rankings with the US?
Well, there's certainly much more significant in terms of absolute numbers trading partners such as China, for example, Japan. But also, I think it should be said that the U.S. and the U.K. have a particularly special relationship. Donald Trump has an affinity for the U.K., he's said many times in the past. So I think it's also quite symbolic in those terms that that agreement is coming first, particularly on May 8th on VE Day, which Donald Trump has renamed Victory Day recently.
The big one, as you touched on, is, of course, China. Japan also irritated by the way negotiations are being carried out, reminding the US the level of US bonds they actually hold and potentially could sell. Where are we on those really big negotiations?
Well, the White House hasn't given any timeline in terms of when they see negotiations progressing or any further deals coming. Now, this weekend in Switzerland, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will be carrying out some negotiations with his Chinese counterparts. But the White House has been very kind of coy about what might come next after the first deal. Recently, there had been quite a lot of speculation in Washington that it could be India or potentially South Korea. But the White House has been very careful not to kind of get ahead of themselves in terms of what deals might be coming. But there are talks ongoing with China, India, various Asian countries, the EU, and other countries as well.
Well, Bernd, we'll be back to you a little later in the programme, but let's return here to our Deputy Economics Editor, Darshini David, and Ben Chu from BBC Verify, sitting, waiting to hear more of the detail. And Darshini, you touched upon it, and I've been reading other posts by economics professors. One described it as basically a photo opportunity with very little macroeconomic significance. Is that sort of assessment right about this deal?
From what we know and what we understand is going to be included, absolutely, because it feels like when we look at this, as I was saying earlier, it'll likely cover only the smaller proportion of goods trade. Some very visible categories, for example, cars, steel, and we're hoping pharmaceuticals might get a look in as well, but that's less than a third of the goods that the UK sells to the US. So yes, absolutely, in economic terms, not something that's going to move the dial very much at all. And what's interesting is the kind of things we're told are not up for negotiation, for example, food standards. Now, that is something meant to appease to voters here, but also it really signifies the fact that the UK is trying to keep its powder dry, keep the US happy, strike that deal early. Relatively easy because we haven't got much of a trade imbalance with the US, so we're not President Trump's biggest enemies in that sense, but also leaves the door open for the UK to strike an agreement, a revised agreement with the EU, to look at that afresh. And that, of course, is our bigger trading relationship, and that's something that the UK wants to look at as well.
You touched on something, and Ben, let me ask you this question, because Donald Trump is obsessed with trade deficits, describes it as cheating the US. That doesn't exist with the UK. So going right back to basics, why were tariffs put on in the first place?
Well, it's a very good point, Matthew. Now, most economists would say a trade deficit is not evidence of cheating by any individual country, despite what the president has repeatedly said and used to justify his tariffs. Now, in terms of whether the US and the UK have one or not, it depends actually whose figures you look at. Quite alarmingly, if you look at the US's figures, the trade is broadly balanced between the two. In fact, the US has a small surplus with the UK. But if you look at the UK's figures and you look at goods and services, they suggest, as those figures I was showing before, that actually the UK has a surplus in its trade with the US. Now, there's various measurement, neither is necessarily right or wrong, because it's very, very hard to measure services trade because of the nature of it. But I think what most economists would say, it just underlines the folly, if you like, of targeting a balanced trade when it's so hard to measure. And also, as I said, it's not necessarily a sign of anything that one country runs a trade deficit with another.
A thought for both of you in terms of the damage done by tariffs. We've concentrated a lot on steel and cars and aluminium. What is the assessment of what we've been through over the last couple of months and the real harms? And in terms of all those other sectors, the cheese sectors, everything else that gets exported to the US, the harms of the 10% tariffs that don't appear to be being lifted by this agreement. Your assessment of both areas?
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? And we had the Bank of England today coming out with revised growth forecasts. And this is the first chance they've had to properly look at what's on the table from President Trump. And their assessment is actually it will likely depress growth in the UK, but not by that much. I think it's 0.3% at its most, which isn't a huge amount when you think about it. But there is that 10% tariff that it's quite funny, isn't it? We're talking about a trade deal and possibly getting excited about that. But these tariffs, the universal tariff will still remain, making it more difficult for companies to sell into the US, most of them anyway. And at the same time, that uncertainty and the volatility in financial markets as well, which could damage job creation, investment, etc., etc. So all of those things in the round, destabilising, doesn't really add up to that goal of pursuing growth.
Ben, we'll play a piece in a moment or two by Coletta Smith, our cost of living correspondent, on what we heard from the Bank of England and the real impacts. But your thoughts on what I was asking Darshini, the sectors that obviously have had focus, but all those other sectors as well.
Yeah, there's lots of different sectors affected. And I think it's really interesting to look at the steel tariffs, because we've focused naturally on our raw steel exports to the US. But what those US tariffs included was products with steel in them. And that affects a much broader range of UK manufacturers and producers, and they were set to be extremely hard hit. So we'll wait to see the detail, but one hopes that those would also be included in any mitigation of the 25% steel tariffs. On the bigger economic picture, I think an economy like the UK, which is so open to trade, what you would be hoping as a policymaker, as the Chancellor, as the Governor of Bank of England, is a booming global trade environment to boost UK exports into that. What Donald Trump's tariffs do is depress overall global economic trade, and that has to feed back into the UK, even if the direct impact, as Darshini was saying, isn't necessarily that large when you measure it.
Let me pause you both there for a moment, because we had that interest rate decision a little earlier in the day. Let's reflect on that in a bit more detail, because UK rates have been cut to their lowest level for 2 years, now at 4.25%. The Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, put the decision down to the steady reduction in the speed of price rises. It's the fourth cut in less than a year, although some had hoped the bank would go further. Here's our cost of living correspondent, Coletta Smith.
Interest rates are going down again. A 0.25 percentage point cut today, which is less money for savers.
Well, they don't make a lot of interest these days, do they? But if it's dropping again, they'll make it even less, won't they?
It's less money, yeah. Yeah, you're right there. It is, but it's great for the younger generation that are paying mortgages.
Are you hopeful that if those mortgage rates go down, that
No.
maybe your rent would...
No, my rent will just keep going up because the houses are getting dearer and dearer. For me, it'll help because I've just been made redundant. So, so that'll help a wee bit. But I don't think it'll ever go back to the way that it was.
Today's interest rate cut is the next step in what could be as many as 5 interest rate cuts this year. That's a huge relief to anyone wanting to remortgage or take out a mortgage for the first time. Even if they're not impacted directly now, that downward direction lifts the real weight off after people have been hammered with high mortgage rates for the last couple of years.
It's really positive news. We were expecting the rate to come down, and lenders have been reducing it over the last few weeks. So there's not going to be, I don't want any clients ringing me today expecting a massive drop today. That isn't going to happen.
As interest rates were predicted to fall, Liz's customers have already seen mortgage rates drifting down.
I did another one yesterday, so I submitted the application earlier on in the year, and I checked the figures yesterday, and since I submitted it, I've saved them £65 a month, which is £4,000 over their initial term, which to a first-time buyer, £65 a month is a lot of money.
The Bank of England says the new US tariffs are having a big impact.
As the past few weeks demonstrate, the global economic environment remains an uncertain one. Interest rates are not on autopilot. They cannot be. Instead, the MPC must continue to respond carefully to the evolving economic circumstances and the outlook for inflation in the UK.
In Ormskirk, student Dr. Samran is hoping to buy a house in the years ahead.
It's a home that you build and make memories in. Fundamentally, I don't think it's going to be a game changer. It's a small percentage, fraction of a percentage of cuts, and whilst it will help people who are about to get on mortgages or going to remortgage, for many people the biggest barrier is upfront deposits and other upfront costs.
But today's cut gives a signal of hope for many others saddled with expensive mortgages. Coletta Smith, BBC News.
Well, let's return to Ben and Darshini, who are here with me. It's so interesting watching a piece like that, because when you look at what is going on in the United States, real frustration from the president towards the Fed chair that he's not cut US interest rates. There was all that speculation about whether Donald Trump would fire Jerome Powell, but only a couple of days ago, him saying that he was worried about the impact tariffs were having on inflation, on jobs, all those sorts of things. So this policy is really having a domestic impact in America very clearly, isn't it?
Totally. And this is something we've talked about before, that, you know, in the front line of this trade war, American consumers, right? They are the ones paying the price ultimately for those higher tariffs that President Trump has put on goods from around the globe. And of course, we wait to see whether or not those higher levels of tariff will eventually be brought in, and there'll be even more pain. But it means there's now a kind of clear water between the US and the UK, because in the US, they're talking about the risk of higher inflation. In the UK, if you look at those forecasts today from the Bank of England, they reckon, and it's not certain, but they reckon that the trade war could actually mean lower inflation than otherwise in the UK, which allows them a little bit more scope perhaps to cut interest rates. But it's all very uncertain. Don't forget, for example, commodity prices have been falling quite sharply over recent weeks because of fears of a slowdown in global trade and growth. And that obviously is good news for inflation in many parts of the globe, including possibly the UK.
Ben, just a moment or two ago, whilst we were watching that piece on the Bank of England, we heard about another delay, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So we're still a few minutes away from it kicking off. We can see here at the BBC all the live pictures coming in on all the feeds from the United States, so you won't miss a moment. As soon as we get the pictures from inside the White House, we'll put that on the screen. But Ben, you were making a really interesting point a moment or two ago to me, which was, you said, this is significant what we're seeing today, if it sticks.
It's an awkward question to ask on a day like this, isn't it? But I think it is a reasonable one to ask in the context of the way Donald Trump operates. Of course, he had a big US, Canada and Mexico trade deal, which he renegotiated in his first term and proclaimed it a great success. And what's he done since returning to the White House this year? He's unilaterally torn that up, to the huge consternation of Mexico and Canada. And he's also torn up effectively free trade deals with countries like Australia and Singapore and South Korea. So, look, we obviously hope that this deal sticks, but I don't think you could put your entire mortgage on it sticking, given the way he operates. That's something that policymakers in the UK, I think, should really bear in mind.
Not just policymakers here, but it has huge implications, because one of the byproducts of what we've seen over the last few months is perhaps pausing on investment, because people need to know what the landscape is before they invest. If there's also a possibility that at some future point there may be another change of mind, it's another reason perhaps to take your time on investments decisions.
Absolutely. And we had a really good example of this just a couple of days ago when Donald Trump said he was going to impose tariffs on movies that are made abroad. Now, the UK has a lot of business from making Hollywood movies. So he's thrown that out on social media. How are companies in the UK who invest in film production supposed to respond to that? Is it just an idle threat? Is he going to follow through on it? Is it going to be related to this trade agreement? Will there be no more tariffs on the UK? All these questions are just entirely up in the air, and I suspect will remain up in the air even after this deal is concluded.
It's interesting. I've had a similar thing from big American bosses. So even those who are meant to benefit from President Trump's trade policy are saying, we have no idea what's going to happen next week, next month. We're meant to make plans for 10 to 20 years' time. We don't know where to put our money. We are basically standing here frozen and waiting to hear. And that's not good for job creation either.
President Trump apparently in his first term continually returned to wanting to impose tariffs, was obsessed about trade deficits, and at each stage he was deflected from doing that to the degree he's done it this time. This time he has done it. He is also obsessed with trying to bring manufacturing back to the United States. I mean, it's another of those massive questions about how realistic that can be, whether it's making toy dolls for children or anything else, the notion that actually that could and should be done in a factory in the United States.
Yes, well, I think this brings us back to this theme, really, of mixed messages, because on the one hand, he is saying, I'm prepared to cut deals, I'm prepared to not be as extreme as I was initially suggesting. And at the same time, as we saw when he met Mark Carney in the White House a couple of days ago, he was still insisting that that reindustrialization of America is going to be a result of his tariff policies. So that contradiction between cutting deals, reindustrializing America through tariffs, what are businesses to do in that context when they just don't know which of those two forces will win out? It's very, very difficult.
It is, and it's really hard, isn't it? Because when you look at past examples, you can see very few jobs have been created in America when, for example, they've slapped big tariffs, as they did last time President Trump was in the White House, on imports of washing machines. And so you've got to wonder how successful this is going to be. Also, those twin aims of reindustrialisation and raising tax revenues through tariffs, you can't do them both at the same time.
Do you know, I had that jotted down as one of the things I wanted to ask you, but we're going to slightly pause and thank you very much for those thoughts so far. We're still not seeing any pictures from the White House, so we are probably a few minutes away. I'm seeing also that Peter Manson, the US or the UK ambassador to the US, will be in the Oval Office when that announcement is made. We are waiting for those pictures. A little bit of a delay. We had anticipated going to that news conference at the top of the hour, so what, almost 50 minutes ago. So a slight delay, no indication as to why so far, but we wait to see those live images from the White House. As soon as we get them, we'll return there. But around the world and across the UK, you're watching BBC News. You're watching BBC News, and we have been waiting for the last 50 minutes or so to see the US president, because he'd already announced that there will be a US-UK trade deal, talking about it in flourishing terms. The Bank of England governor saying it is very good news for the UK, and we saw that cut in interest rates here a little earlier in the day. But we're waiting for the pictures to start from the White House, to hear a news conference from Donald Trump to talk about some of the details. We know the broad parameters. We don't know a lot of the very important detail, and that's why we've been spending the last little while talking to Darshini, talking to Ben about potentially what we might see, the context of what we might see, and the importance of what is about to be announced. And a little later, we are going to hear from the UK Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, to give the UK's perspective of what has been agreed to. We were hearing a little earlier, or it's been reported by the Reuters news agency, that Donald Trump and Keir Starmer had what is described as a warm conversation on Wednesday night, and will again speak in the morning. I'm being told just in my ear that we can actually hear a little bit of that taped conversation between Sir Keir Starmer and Donald Trump from last night. So I'm going to just put that on the screen for you to hear.
Allies, and we're so happy that that's the way it worked out. I want to thank Prime Minister Starmer and his very talented team for their outstanding work and partnership. Today's agreement with the UK is the first in a series of agreements on trade that my administration has been negotiating over the past 4 weeks. With this deal, the UK joins the United States in affirming that reciprocity and fairness is an essential and vital principle of international trade. The deal includes billions of dollars of increased market access for American exports, especially in agriculture, dramatically increasing access.
Well, I'm going to come away from that recorded conversation because those live pictures that we've been waiting for in the Oval Office, there he is, the US President. Let's put the microphones up.
In addition, the UK will reduce or eliminate numerous non-tariff barriers that unfairly discriminated against American products, but this is now turning out, I think, really to be a great deal for both countries because it'll be really great for the UK also. So they're opening up the country. Their country is a little closed, and we appreciate that. They'll also be fast-tracking American goods through their customs process, so our exports go to a very, very quick form of approval, and there won't be any red tape. Things are going to move very quickly both ways. The final details are being written up in the coming weeks. We'll have it all very conclusive, but the actual deal is a very conclusive one. We think just about everything's been approved. So good for both countries, and we'll also receive new market access for American chemicals, machinery, and many other industrial products that weren't allowed, and they'll end up getting products that they'll be able to price, and if they like them better and we make great products, they'll be buying those products, but they were not available in the UK. Furthermore, in a historic step, the deal includes plans that will bring the United Kingdom into the economic security alignment with the United States. That's the first of its kind. So we have a big economic security blanket, and that's very important, and we feel very, very comfortable with that because it's been a great ally, truly one of our great allies. I mean, a lot of people say our greatest ally. I don't want to insult people by saying that, but I can say it's certainly one of our greatest, and right at the top, and they're the first one we're talking about. And by the way, we have many meetings planned today and tomorrow, and every country wants to be making deals. And we have a meeting, as you know, Scott will be going over to Switzerland on Saturday, and that'll be very, very interesting. We'll find out, but I think they want to make a deal very badly too. Both countries have agreed that the economic security is national security and will be working together as allies to ensure that we have a strong industrial base, appropriate export controls, and protections for key technologies and industries like steel. Steel is a big factor. Both countries will become stronger with steel and things necessary for military. You know, we used to build ships and other things literally at a level that nobody's ever seen, and we've eased up, and I would say that the UK certainly eased up, but now we're going to be uneasing both, and we work together. Once again, I want to thank Prime Minister Starmer. He's been terrific for his partnership in this matter, the special relationship and external bond. It's really an external and an internal bond between our two countries will soon be stronger than ever before, and we really do. We have a great relationship. I want to just say that the representatives of UK have been so professional, and it's been an honor doing business with all of them, and in particular the Prime Minister. And I'd like to introduce him now to say a few words. Mr. Prime Minister, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. President, Donald. And this is a really fantastic, historic day in which we can announce this deal between our two great countries. And I think it's a real tribute to the history that we have of working so closely together. Can I pay tribute, Donald, to your negotiating team as well, particularly yes. Howard and Jameson, who've done an incredible job, a very professional job, and my team as well. Two negotiating teams have worked at pace now for a number of weeks to bring in this deal today. Really important deal. This is going to boost trade between and across our countries. It's going to not only protect jobs but create jobs opening market access. And as you say, Donald, the timing couldn't be more apt, because not only was it 80 years ago today that victory came for Europe after and at the end of the Second World War, but of course on that day the UK and the US stood together as the closest of allies. And Donald, I think even down to the hour, because you may or may not know that it was about this time of day, exactly 80 years ago, that Winston Churchill announced victory in Europe, and that led to great celebrations across Europe, across America, but particularly in the United Kingdom. Literally people going out into the street, putting bunting up, going up to the palace. And so to be able to announce this great deal on the same day, 80 years... This great deal on the same day, 80 years forward, almost at the same hour, and as we were 80 years ago, with the UK and the US standing side by side, I think is incredibly important and makes this truly historic. That close relationship has endured over those 80 years. As you know, Donald, when it comes to defence and security and intelligence sharing, of course, there are no two countries that are closer than our two countries. And now we take this into new and important territory by adding trade and the economy to the closeness of our relationship. It is built, as you say, on those notions of fairness and reciprocal arrangements. We've always had a fair and balanced arrangement between our countries. This builds on that, hugely important for sectors like car manufacturing and for steel and aluminium and so many others. And yes, we can finish ironing out some of the details, but there's a fantastic platform here, including, of course, on the tech side, where I think I'm right in saying we're the only two Western countries with trillion-dollar sectors when it comes to tech. And in the end, it comes down to, as you say, Donald, economic security is national security. On national security, we've been absolutely the closest of allies for so many years, keeping the peace through that close alliance, that friendship. And now we add to that this deal on trade and the economy. And I want to thank you for your leadership on that, Donald, and for the way in which your team have negotiated this. And I'm so pleased that we've got this deal, we've finalised it, and we've built an incredible platform for the future. So thank you so much. Donald, I'm now going to go and do a press conference. I think you have your press in with you, but on the details, I think if you've got Howard, etc., we can deal with that through one of my team.
That's great. Well, Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much. He does, but the US and UK have been working for years to try and make a deal. And it never quite got there. Yeah. It did with this Prime Minister. So I want to just congratulate you.
Well, with this President, this Prime Minister, we've managed to achieve what many people have tried to achieve for many years. Right. And I'm really pleased. And it feels completely historic and on a special 80-year anniversary as well. So, Donald, thank you so much. It's really good to have got this deal over the line. Tribute to both teams, tribute to our countries, and tribute to your leadership.
Thank you. Well, it really is a great thing. And you go do your press conference, and I'll see you soon. Maybe speak to you later. But thank you very much. And an incredible thing. I can't tell you that for so many years, even as I sat, everybody talked and talked and talked about a deal with. It just seemed like a natural deal, but it was not done. But now it was done with us. So I feel very proud to have been a part of it. Keir, thank you very much.
Thanks, Donald, and we'll speak again soon.
Very good. So long. Bye. Why don't I do this? Why don't I have our Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, give a little description of the deal pretty quick, and then the good side, the very nice side, we'll be speaking about it also, maybe, from so you get a pretty equal. I think it's a very, it's just been a deal that we thought very complicated. It became very simple. It's opening up.
If you're just joining us here on BBC News, you're watching the US President announcing the trade deal between the US and the UK. We were just listening to Keir Starmer as well, describing this as a really fantastic, historic day as he was there listening to what the US President was saying. And I think we're about to get some of the actual details of what has been announced, and Donald Trump just turning to Peter Mandelson, the ambassador to the US, but he's about to actually just hand the baton over to get some of the basic details about this trade deal. So again, let's listen in.
Economy in the world, and the fourth largest that we export to, right? So it's a huge market, a top 10 market. If you remember Liberation Day, they were at 10% because we have balanced trade with the UK, right? They say they have a surplus, but of course that counts gold bullion, which is, so let's just call it balanced trade. So how do you open up a market in balanced trade? People think it's impossible. They've always thought it was impossible until President Trump came on the scene and changed the way things work. So here's what we've got. We've opened up new market access, ethanol, beef, machinery, all the agricultural products. They've agreed to open their markets, and that will add $5 billion of opportunity to American exporters. So the question is, why would they do that now? Because they've never done it before. And we still have our 10% tariff on, which will produce $6 billion of revenue for the United States. So the idea was, how do they keep their jobs, protect their economy, and do the best for their people while opening the market for us? And the way is they studied it, their team was exceptional, and they tried to figure out the markets that they're importing from other people and try to send them over to America. So why were they always favoring others and not us? And what they've done is they've found the ways to do that so that we have new access, right? But the UK workers are protected, and that was the balance. So we did a deal with them in automobiles, and you know, if you're not building here, we charge you a 25% tariff. But the president, and by the way, I want to make this clear, while Jameson and I worked hard, this was the president's deal, and people think, oh, that's not the way it works. If you got to sit next to him, I have the best deal maker to my left, and if you don't think that we take advantage of him calling the prime minister and getting that deal done, you don't understand who's the president of the United States. So he's the closer. He gets deals done that we could never get done because he understands business, he understands deals, and that's why we're here today. So he agreed they could send 100,000 cars into America and only pay a 10% tariff. And that protects their car industry. And remember, we do 16 million cars a year. So this is only like 0.6%. But for the UK auto people, this is tens of thousands of jobs that the president agreed that he would protect for them. So he made that deal, right? Then steel and aluminum. Right? Their steel business has been destroyed like everybody else has been destroyed by people dumping steel into their markets. And British Steel had announced it was closing down. So the British government, as part of this deal, nationalized British Steel, and they're going to match the kinds of models we do. They'll put tariffs on, they'll put quotas on. They want to do it with America so they can be part of the resurgence of steel and aluminum in America, and that saves them, again, thousands and thousands of jobs. So if you go step by step, aero and commercial planes, they sell Rolls-Royce engines to Boeing. We've agreed to let Rolls-Royce engines and those kind of plane parts to come over tariff-free. And what you're going to hear today is there's going to be an announcement in the UK that they are buying $10 billion worth of Boeing planes later today, but I'm going to let the name of the airline announce it because that's theirs to do it. Part of this deal was always to do it together and to do it strong, and you can see the numbers on this board. Everything about this board works exceptionally well for the United States of America. It lays out the plan that you can work with us in autos, you can work with us with aero and commercial, you can work with us in pharmaceuticals if you have a supply chain that is secure and protected in national security. So we feel really good about the deal. You've heard the Prime Minister. He feels really good about the deal, right? And we started at 10%, and we ended at 10%. and the market for America is better, and this is a perfect example of why Donald Trump produced Liberation Day. People don't understand he gets things done in a matter of time. This would have taken Jameson and I 3 years, maybe. And instead, we got it done in 45 days, certainly, because we work for Donald Trump. So, Jameson, my partner in all this, maybe Jameson, you'd like to talk a little, and then we'll turn it over to the UK.
Sure, happy to do that. Everyone has great remarks. I just have to echo the President and the Prime Minister when we talk about VE Day. This is something we've been waiting for decades, and there's no more appropriate day to do this. And when we step back and we look back a few weeks from now or months from now or years from now, we're going to look back at this day and better appreciate the significance, I think. And I'll just say as well, in terms of negotiating, I mean, the UK negotiators, you know, we've got one right here, did an incredible job, right? This is why you win wars, right? When you act like this, and the ambassador, he knows more about trade than a lot of us here, based on his background. And I would say on this deal, Mr. President, what we've shown is that it is time to change the way we do trade. People said we couldn't do a global tariff. We did a global tariff. They said no one would want to deal with us. People want to deal. They said no one give offers. You saw that stack of offers I showed you yesterday of all those countries. Said we wouldn't get deals, and here we are with a deal with the 6th largest economy. We've agreed to have fair and reciprocal trade, and we've done it in record time.
Thank you very much,
sir.
Great job.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Ambassador, please. Well, Mr. President, thank you very much indeed in hosting us this morning. And thank you very much indeed also for that very typical 11th hour intervention by you with your phone call to the President, demanding even more out of this deal than any of us expected. So thank you for that. The Prime Minister was delighted, obviously, to take that call late at night. But you took it to another level, and I think the point I would make is twofold. One is that if we're going to rebalance and rebuild international trade in a way that serves all our interests, then we're better doing that together than separately and apart, and that's what we're on a mission to do. But secondly, you've done what you said you would do. You said to the Prime Minister when he came and we visited in the Oval that you would do a good trade deal with the United Kingdom, that you would do it at pace, and that we would be first. And you have delivered that. You know, you've been true to your word. So thank you very much indeed for that. For us, it's not the end. It's it's the end just of the beginning. I mean, there is yet more we can do in reducing tariffs and trade barriers so as to open up our markets to each other even more than we're agreeing to do today. But it also provides us with the platform, the springboard, to do what I think will be even more valuable for both our countries in the future, and that's creating a technology partnership between the United States and the United Kingdom so that we can harness science and technology in order to create future industries and future jobs, and to do that together in the way we work so closely already in the national security and defence area. We can just take that to yet further areas of science, enterprise and endeavour. So we're looking forward to doing that in the coming months. You've launched us extremely well today. It just, in my view, as the Prime Minister has said, just shows what two countries who trust each other, who are confident in each other and are familiar with each other can do, not just for ourselves, but for those, the rest of the world, who need to benefit from a bigger and better international trading system. Thank you very much. It was beautifully stated. What a beautiful accent, too. I'd like to have that accent. Thank you.
My mother would be proud.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
James Matthews from Sky News.
Yes.
Can I ask, why Britain and why now? And you've described this deal as a full and comprehensive deal, and yet we've just heard from Mr. Mandelson, it's the end of the beginning. Clearly, there's much more work still to do. With respect, are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal? because you're a president who needs a result at a difficult time?
I think that it's a great deal for both parties. It's for us. We're opened up. I didn't know how closed it was. Quite closed, the market, as you know, the UK, and it opens up a tremendous market for us, and it works out very well, and a lot of assets. You see the chart, and those are tremendous assets. But we've been trying, and when you say why us, meaning your country, we've been trying for years, and they've been trying for years to make a deal, including when I was in the, first term. It would always be people talking, but they weren't getting it done. But for 25 years before that, they were trying always to make a deal, a very significant deal. I actually, until I looked at the numbers, I didn't realize this is a very conclusive deal, but we think we can grow it even from that. But this is a maxed out deal, not like you said it. You said it really incorrectly. This is a maxed out deal that we're going to make bigger, and we make it bigger through growth. But we have tremendous assets involved. I was surprised to see how big your country is in trade, actually. One of the biggest in technology and so many other things. It's agriculture. I really didn't know. It's depending on your definition, it's from 4 to 5 to 6. That's pretty big in the world. So I was very impressed by that. But we're going to take it to new levels. It's a very big deal right now, but I think it is going to grow just of its own volition. It's going to grow, and over time there'll be changes made, there'll be adjustments made because we're flexible. We'll see things that we can do even better. But it's very conclusive, and we think everyone's going to be happy, and the people of your country are going to be very impressed with the result, and they'll be able to buy from more people. They'll be able to price things differently. They'll be able to get some products that aren't available to them now that we make better than anybody in the world. And it's just something that it's a great thing that it came together. It's so nice because we have many countries want to make a deal, and many countries are very unhappy that we happen to choose this one, to be honest with you. But it's a long time, our oldest ally, or just about. I guess a couple of people claim that too, but let's put it right at the top. I think it's going to be something very special for UK and special for the United States.
Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Reagan Reese with the Daily Caller. How close are you to more deals, and when do you expect the next to be announced?
Well, very close. We have numerous deals. I know Howard's going back. As soon as this is finished, your press conference, he's got numerous. And Scott, who's right over here, who's fantastic, by the way. You were great on television this morning. I watched you. That was very, he gave them a little lesson in the world and economics. But Scott's going to be going to Switzerland, meeting with China, and they very much want to make a deal. We can all play games. Who made the first call? Who didn't make it doesn't matter. It only matters what happens in that room. But I will tell you that China very much wants to make a deal. We'll see how that works out. Every country throughout the last 40, 50 years has literally ripped off the United States on trade, on military, on protection, on all the different things. And we are now making fair deals. And in this case, it's great because we really weren't very much involved. You have the European Union, which is, I think you made the right decision years ago. I don't know if you remember, I was opening up Turnberry the day that you were voting. And they asked me, would it happen or would it not happen? I said, no, I think they're going to go their own separate way. I think it's better for them. And they did. I think it's going to end up being a very smart decision. But a big part of that decision was always that you'd be able to make a deal with the United States. And they were unable to do that. But now they made it. And it's a tremendous, it's very important. That was always a big part of your decision on Brexit. And they were never able to make that deal. It was a tough one. And this one it's amazing with time. This one just went very smoothly, went quickly and smoothly. And a lot of common sense, as I like to say. There's tremendous common sense, but it's going to make your country much bigger in terms of trade, and it's going to make our country much bigger in terms of trade, too. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead, behind you.
Oh, yeah. Tom Bateman at the BBC. Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned meat.
You're with who?
The BBC.
Oh, good. Very nice. They treat me beautifully.
You mentioned meat and beef exports. The UK currently doesn't accept American beef because of its own food standards. Are you calling on the UK to accept all American beef and chicken products?
Well, I think they'll take what they want. We have plenty of it. We have every type. We have every classification you can have. As you know, Bobby Kennedy is doing a tremendous job, and he's, I think, probably heading toward your system with no chemical, no this, no that. I mean, I think we're heading that way. It seems to be. And but we have that also. So we're a very big country. We have a lot of beef. We're a very big country, so it'll be great. Yes, yes.
You want me to jump in?
Yes.
Let's talk about American beef really quickly, and it can't be understated. I'm Brooke Rollins, by the way. How important this deal is and what this means to American farmers and ranchers. Specific to the beef, this is going to exponentially increase our beef exports. And to be very clear, American beef is the safest, the best quality, and the crown jewel of American agriculture for the world. So I think a really important part of this deal isn't just the ethanol reducing of tariffs from 19 to 0, which for our row croppers is a huge deal, but also for beef. And as we move forward, I know our incredible trade team is looking at all of the meats, all of the produce, really all of our agriculture exports. And I don't know if there's an industry that has been treated more unfairly and has suffered more than our agriculture industry. So we look forward to, I'll be in the UK on Monday, talking to my counterpart over there for next week, and look forward to moving that out across the country. The president is an
I think
incredible
we could say
defender of
that we have the best in the world, best tractors, the best everything in the world, and they say that our agriculture is, second to none. You understand, and it'll be a great asset. People are going to be able to have options, choice, and they'll have more of it. And that usually means lower prices. How about we'll do you and then you? Go ahead.
Follow-up question for the Italian TV, Daniele Compatangelo, LA7, TV 2000, Primetime Media. So congratulations for the deal. We'll see a big revenues from the chart. But what's the rest of Europe? It's a victory day, but other European countries, it seems like they're losing the trade.
We intend to make a deal with Europe. We have found that the European Union treated us extremely unfairly, very difficult, and hurt themselves in doing so. And they very much want to make a deal. We'll be dealing with them. We are dealing with them currently. So that'll cover pretty much the rest of it. But this was separate because of Brexit in particular. This was a separate deal. It always seems so natural. I mean, all the media would say that this seemed to be like, why did this happen 25 years? Why didn't it happen a long time ago? And it was always amazing to me. Somebody would say, hey, we got to make a deal. We have to make a deal. But this deal just fell into place. The Prime Minister did a fantastic job. His representatives are total professionals, and they got along well, and it just seemed to work. And I think one of the reasons it did is because we blew up the whole system. If we would have just been dealing with you separately or, country by country, we blew up the whole system. It was very fair to very unfair to the United States. And I think because of that, this worked out so nicely, and I'm honored that it was the first deal. Please.
Sir, you mentioned...
Well, why don't you go in the back, yes.
Oh, thanks, sir. I'm with the London Times. I'd say this is a great day for James Bond because now Aston Martins will be available to American buyers. Will it be even better by extending it to film? You've talked about a big tariff on films, and we'd like to know if there'll be relief on British...
Well, we're going to have a discussion on that separately. And
well, I suspect those questions are going to go on for quite a while. Donald Trump saying it's a breakthrough deal, great for both countries. We're going to switch away from that because Keir Starmer, you heard him earlier, saying he was going to hold his own news conference. It started, so let's listen in.
Economic prosperity deal. And that is a deal that will protect British businesses and save thousands of jobs in Britain. Really important, skilled, well-paid jobs. It will remove tariffs on British steel and aluminium, reducing them to 0. It will provide vital assurances for our life sciences sector, so important to our economy, and grant unprecedented market access for British farmers without compromising our high standards. And for the great British cars that you make here, that we see all around us, this deal means that the US tariffs will now be cut from 27.5% down to 10% for 100,000 vehicles every year. That's a huge and important reduction. And I know from when I was last here, how much that will have been weighing on your minds when you knew the size of the tariff that would otherwise be in place. And to get that decrease was hugely important to me. And I can tell you, my teams were working really hard on this deal night and day for weeks. I was working with them. And in politics, what matters sometimes is who you have in your mind's eye when you're making these deals. Who do you have in your mind's eye when you're taking decisions? And what I took away from here last time was you and the brilliant work that you do, and had you in my mind's eye as we did that. And we've got scope now to increase that quota as we go forward. So this is not fixed. This is where we've got to. And all of these tariff cuts will come into place as soon as possible. And that's really important as well in relation to the work that you're doing and the brilliant cars that you make. And as Adrian said, I was here with you just, as I say, a few weeks ago, and I promised you that I would deliver in the national interest. And today I'm really pleased to come back here to be able to look you in the eye and to say I've delivered on the promise I made to you. And that's why as soon as I knew this deal was coming in today, I said I want to come back to JLR to talk to the workforce there for whom this means so much. Now, of course, we are the first country to secure such a deal with the United States. And in an era of global insecurity and instability, that is so important. The great challenge of our age is to secure and to renew Britain. And that is what we're going to do. Acting in the national interest, shaping this new era, not being shaped by it. If it's not good for Britain, we won't do it. If it doesn't mean more money in people's pockets, we won't do it. If it doesn't mean security and renewal in every part of the country, we won't do it. But that doesn't mean we're turning inward. Instead, we're sending a message to the world that Britain is open for business, seeking trade agreements with India on Tuesday, with the US today, and working to boost trade with other partners too, including, of course, the EU, with whom we have a really important meeting just a week on Monday, making deals that will benefit working people. And you know, in recent years, an idea has taken hold that you somehow show your strength by rejecting your allies, that you shut the door, put the phone down, storm off. I've had plenty of people urging me to do that, rather than stay in the room and fight for the interests of our country. And I want to be absolutely crystal clear, that is not how this government operates. It's never how we will operate. We don't storm off, we stay in the room and we negotiate and we work for our country with the national interest at the foremost of our mind. Because the other way of working doesn't deliver the benefits that working people need. So I also want to be clear, this is just the start. With the deal we've done today, we can say jobs saved, jobs won, not job done, because we're more ambitious for what the UK and the US can do together. So we're hammering out further details to reduce barriers to trade with the United States across the board. We have £1.5 trillion invested in each other's economies, creating 2.5 million jobs across both countries. And there are so many areas where I think we can do even more than that and put pounds in the pockets of working people across the United Kingdom. As the two biggest services exporters in the world, we will bring down barriers, creating jobs in our thriving sectors in Leeds, in Manchester, London, Birmingham. As the only two Western nations with trillion-dollar tech sectors, we'll go further to deepen the partnership in new technologies to shape the innovations of the next century together and create the jobs of the future. Because look, our history shows what we can achieve when we work together. And what timing for this deal, that we've agreed this deal on VE Day. 80 years ago today, Churchill was addressing the nation at the end of the Second World War, victory in Europe. And we were standing the United Kingdom with the United States on defence and security. And for 80 years, we've been the closest of partners. And today, we've added to that trade and the economy in the special relationship between us, defined by peace and economic prosperity. So it's fitting today that we renew the bond on the 80th anniversary of VE Day. I'm going to take some questions in a minute. Then I do want to spend some time with you because I know how important this is for you, all and all of your work colleagues here, all of your families, who I know will have been worried about what is going to happen. Of course they're worried. They're proud of what you do, worried about what might have happened, but not just you and your families, but your communities and all the other jobs that depend on the work that you do here. You're iconic. We're proud of what you do. And when I promised you we would do whatever we needed to do to get to a position where we could ensure that your brilliant work continues and thrives in the future, I meant that. It was a promise made and a promise I always intended to deliver to you. And I'm trying to catch everybody's eyes because, as I say, in politics what matters is who are you thinking about, who have you got in your mind's eye when you're having those conversations, whether it's President Trump just now or last night halfway through the Arsenal game, or whether it's the teams negotiating as they've been over weeks and days, particularly intensely in current days. So thank you here for being with me today. I will try to talk to you some more in a minute, but please, through you, if I could extend that to all of your colleagues here. I know they'll be on different shifts, but I hope this will give them the well-earned boost that they absolutely deserve. I will now take questions from the media. I've got a list here. I think, Chris, I've got you first.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason, BBC News. Prime Minister, this is a...
Can you just a little bit louder,
yeah, sure.
Chris? I'm so sorry.
Prime Minister, this is a freeing up of trade conditions with America compared with where we were, but is it better than, say, 6 months ago, given, for instance, some tariffs are still there?
Well, Chris, the question you should be asking is it better than where we were yesterday? And I think if you should come out when you finished asking me questions and talk to the workforce here, because what this does is to reduce to zero the tariffs on steel and aluminium. Look how important that is. Reduces massively from 27.5% to 10% the tariffs on the cars that we export. So important to JLR, actually to the sector generally, but JLR in particular, who sell so many cars into the American market, proudly do that. And of course, it also includes on pharmaceuticals some really important measures. Obviously, we don't have tariffs yet, but we've got within the deal significantly preferential treatment, whatever happens in the future. So this is hugely important for our pharmaceutical sector as well. In addition to that, we said we had red lines on standards, particularly in agriculture. We've kept to those standards. The SPS red line is a red line that's written into the agreement. And so I think if you put that package together, you can see that it's a significant step in the right direction for our country and our national interest, and for the very many thousands of jobs that will now be protected, saved and enhanced by the fact that we've done this deal. And I'm really proud we have. And I know people along the way were urging me to walk away, to descend in a different kind of relationship. We didn't. We did the hard yards. We stayed in the room. And I'm really pleased to say to the workforce here and through them to the country how important I think this deal is. Thank you, Chris. Robert, I'm coming to you next.
Prime Minister, all the polling shows that the British people think an improved trade deal with the European Union is more important than a US trade deal. The British people are right, aren't they?
Well, Robert, you're already minutes after this deal with the US still pushing me back to shouldn't we choose between the US and the EU? No is the answer to that question. I genuinely believe that we can have a good relationship and agreement with the US and a good relationship and a good agreement with the EU. That's why the red lines have been really important in the way that we've negotiated this. But look what we've shown this week, that through patience, through pragmatism, through not doing politics as performance, but doing politics as the serious art of negotiation. We got a deal 48 hours ago in India, which of course also deals with car manufacturing, by the way, so there's discussion to be had there. We've got the deal now with the US. We go on Monday week to the EU-UK summit, but I've always said that the strength of the UK is being able to deal both with the US and the EU on security and defence and on trade and the economy. And that's the basis on which we've moved forward. And I think the workforce here would say to you in very loud terms, thank goodness you didn't take the advice of others to walk away from the negotiations with the US, because it would be they that would pay the price if we had done that, and I wasn't prepared to let that happen. Thank you, Robert. Beth, Sky News.
Thank you, Prime Minister Beth Rigby, Sky News. Back in February, when you did a press conference with Donald Trump in the White House, he said, we could end up with a real trade deal where tariffs wouldn't be necessary. We'll see. Those were Donald Trump's words. And you've come out, and yes, you have a concession on cars. You have a flat tariff still of 10%. Are you disappointed with that? Is this just the start? And to those voters last week in the local elections that gave you the worst ever vote share you've had in a set of elections as a Labour Party, what's your message to them? Thank you.
Well, my message to them is that we absolutely get the message that they sent last Thursday. We will remain focused as ever on the national interest, and I have them in mind, I have the workforce here in mind when we make the decisions that we make. I don't make them for my sake, I make them on behalf of working people across this country. And in relation to this deal, yes, we would like to go further in relation to tariffs, but I think it's really important that we've been able to get this deal over the line now, because in that way we've been able to protect and save and enhance jobs right here, right now. And that reduction from 27.5% down to 10% makes a huge difference to firms like JLR and the decisions they have to make about the future, decisions that I want them to make about the future. Steel and aluminium obviously been in the news hugely in recent weeks. To get that down to 0% as well is hugely important. Pharmaceuticals is one of the most important sectors in our economy, and therefore there's nothing to get down at the moment because there isn't a tariff, but if there should be, to already have got into a position of significantly preferential outcomes will, I know, be a welcome relief to them. So I measure this by the reactions of those that are most affected by the tariffs, which is the workforce here, it's those in pharmaceuticals, those that are working in steel and aluminium. But look, there's a huge ambition here. There's a lot in the deal about tech. We are two of the leading economies on tech. There's a huge amount we can do on tech as well. So we want to go further. We want to go further in those areas and on tariffs, keeping our red lines absolutely in place on SBS and on food standards and agricultural standards, because that matters so much to us here in Britain. Thank you, Beth. Paul.
Hi there, Paul McRae, Channel 4 News. Afternoon, Prime Minister. Look, business needs certainty. President Trump is no stranger to changing his mind on a whim. What assurances can you give business, give the workers here, that despite what you've agreed today, we're not all going to wake up to a post tomorrow that effectively rips all that up?
Well, we've been negotiating this text for a long time. I had discussions with Donald Trump along the way, including discussions last night. We're clearly in agreement. There is a written text. This is reduced to writing. That text will be available. So this is an agreement that is absolutely clear. We've worked well together. We respect each other, the President and I, and we trust each other and have trusted each other through this process. Each of us mandating our negotiating teams to get the best deal for our respective countries. Both teams have fought hard in tough negotiations, and we've arrived at an agreement that I went through with the President last night, and we've just agreed moments ago here at JLR. So clear agreement in terms, and these tariff reductions to come in very short order, making a material difference to the lives of very many people across the country. Thank you very much. I've got Noah. Noah.
Noah from The Sun. Hi, Prime Minister. I was wondering if you could please spell out for us what your strategy is going to be to get those 10% tariffs down to 0%. I know you're talking a lot about today being jobs saved, not a job done, but a lot of people will be thinking 10% still isn't good enough. We're worse off than a year ago. How are you going to approach negotiations going forward, and how long will it take till we get to 0%?
I will approach the negotiations in the same way I've approached the negotiations with India and with President Trump to get to today's deal. With India, I met Prime Minister Modi at the G20 in Brazil. We agreed that we would get our teams to work together at pace in a courteous, respectful, business-like way. With President Trump, we've operated in the same way, not walking out the room, not slamming doors, but staying in the room negotiating. The same with the EU, respectfully negotiating in relation to the summit that we'll have a week on Monday. So we'll do it in exactly the same way. But please do not underestimate the significance of the tariff reductions today, because these are measured in thousands of good, well-paid jobs across the country. And that really matters. That's at the heart of everything that I believe in. And I believe that serious, pragmatic, in-the-room negotiations acting in the national interest are far better than performative politics, people slamming the door, floundering out, being performative but not actually delivering for working people. And I'll continue in the same vein. We've had 2 trade deals this week by acting in that way, and I think that shows that serious pragmatism defeats performative politics any day of the week. Thank you. Mikey from The Mirror.
You mentioned tech a couple of times. JD Vance has on a number of occasions said that one of his red lines is concessions on our anti-hate speech laws. How have you managed...
what, sorry?
Anti-hate speech laws. How have you managed to talk him round on that? And very quickly, if I may, I think you'll admit that this wasn't what you were expecting to do today. Donald Trump has been struggling to land his arguments on tariffs. Have we been bounced into this by a president that needs help out of a hole?
Well, look, I mean, in terms of free speech, I've been really clear throughout. We've had free speech in this country for a very, very long time. It's one of our foundational principles on which we're all very, very proud, and that will long, long be the case. There's nothing in this deal that impinges on that in any way whatsoever. In relation to the timing of this, no, not at all. Our teams have been hard at work for weeks on end. I've wanted to get a deal over the line. I make no, I'm not ashamed of that. I wanted, because I knew how important it was, particularly for JLR, that we got a deal, that we got it over the line, and we got it over the line in a timely manner. The last thing I wanted to do was deliver a deal that didn't come in time for those that desperately need it. So, no, I didn't know the exact day. I wouldn't have been having my phone call with President Trump halfway through the second half of the Arsenal-PSG game had I planned it better. But that's the way it turned out. That's the discussion we were having late last night about how we proceeded with this deal. And I'm really pleased to be able to come here today. And actually, to be able to do it on VE Day is really significant because, of course, the US was standing there as our ally 80 years ago today. So today is an opportunity to reflect on the fact that today we stand together as allies on security and defence. Of course, there are no 2 countries that are closer on security and defence, but now we add trade and the economy to those issues where we're the closest of allies, and I'm really pleased about that. And then Hugo. Hugo.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Hugo Jai from the iPaper. Just the other day, President Trump threatened to put tariffs on the film industry. Obviously, Britain has a huge film sector. Have you asked him to take that threat off the table? What did he say? And if he hasn't taken that off the table, how are you going to stop that becoming a reality?
Well, obviously there aren't any tariffs in place on film at the moment. And of course we're discussing it with the President's team. We'll take the same approach as we've taken on other issues, whether it's tariffs imposed, which we've been able to reduce, or potential tariffs in areas like pharmaceuticals or film will take the same approach because for me what matters is acting in the national interest and making sure that everything that we do is good for working people in this country. And whether it's steel and aluminium, whether it's car building, whether it's pharmaceuticals or film, we are brilliant at these things. And therefore I will act in the national interest and have those discussions and film as we've done on other issues with the President. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you. And I'll now talk to some of the workforce, if I may. How are you all?
Well, as Keir Starmer drifts into talking to some of the workers there, we will come away hailing the deal. He repeatedly said that he wasn't interested in performative politics. He was interested in the politics of negotiation, citing the India deal, citing this deal, talking about thousands of jobs being saved as a result of the US-UK trade deal. Well, still with me is our Deputy Economics Editor, Darshini David, and Ben Chu from BBC Verify. And that was fascinating, first listening to Donald Trump, then listening to Keir Starmer, both hailing this deal. Your headline thoughts, both of you. Darshini first.
Well, we heard that fanfare in the Oval Office, didn't we? And that very different reception to Keir Starmer at the press conference in this country, which just gives you a little bit of insight into what's going on there, because whereas we have seen some concessions, some carve-outs in particular for the car industry here, which will help a number of manufacturers, that baseline tariff of 10% on most goods being sold into the US still remains. What that in effect means is that you have seen a tripling of the average tariff on British goods being sold into the US compared to just a few months ago. Coming the other way, they've been cut by 2/3, and by the US's own calculations, they could see a boost of $5 billion when it comes to export sales. So when we talk about winners and losers, it's pretty clear who may have actually got the upper hand here. Having said that, as we heard from the Prime Minister, first to get a deal, that is quite something in this current environment. It is a big win for this government, symbolically at least. And as we were hearing there is more there that perhaps could be done. Pharmaceuticals, we were talking about this earlier, weren't we, Ben, about how pharmaceuticals is one of those big areas. There's a big question mark over, second biggest category of exports for the UK. Hopefully we'll get preferential treatment.
I'm glancing down only because, and Ben, I'll bring you in on this, because I'm seeing and reading the Conservative response to this deal with Kemi Badenoch saying when Labour negotiates, Britain loses, we cut our tariffs, America triple theirs. Keir Starmer called this historic. It is not historic. We've just been shafted.
Well, that's very interesting, isn't it?